Since 2013, Diversified Rehabilitation Group has been a lifeline for first responders, veterans, and their families. Diversified offers personalized residential treatment for PTSD, post-traumatic stress injuries, anxiety, and depression. The Diversified team brings rich clinical expertise and has a strong understanding of first responders and veterans' unique culture, values, needs, and work settings. Diversified delivers tailored and immersive healing solutions for enduring mental health well-being. For more information, visit ptsdrecovery.ca. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Blue Line, the podcast, a podcast created for and aimed at all members of law enforcement. I'm Brittani Schroeder, editor of Blue Line magazine. Today, I'm joined by Chief Mental Health Officer Derek Sienko, who is a certified police chaplain who holds a master's in military psychology. He's also a certified Canadian vocational rehabilitation professional, as well as a return to work and disability management professional. Derek is a post-traumatic stress disorder survivor, and mental health is where we'll be focusing our conversation today. I'm thrilled to be having this important conversation with you, Derek, and thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. I sincerely appreciate that opportunity.
Derek, I'd like to talk about the mental health of first responders and specifically police officers. This is something that I've talked about in Blue Line, the podcast before, and that's why you and I are going to be looking at slightly different aspects of this mental health topic. So first, I'd like to know if in recent years, has there been an increase in the number of officers being diagnosed with PTSD and depression and anxiety?
Well, this is, I would say, it's a continuum, unfortunately. Currently, there's high rates of mental health difficulties among police professionals are well documented and have widespread negative consequences. National Canadian survey found that 37% of municipal, provincial, and 50% of federal police officers were positively screened for mental health disorders. A separate meta-analysis report indicated that about 50% of police officers screened for post-traumatic stress disorder, 14% for depression, 11% for anxiety disorder, and 25% for hazardous drinking. Moreover, according to 2020 studies, the suicide ideation rate among Canadian police officers is also very alarming. When asked questions like, have you ever attempted suicide, about 538 police officers respond yes to that. Have you ever made a plan to attempt suicide? 223 police officers said yes to this. And have you ever attempted suicide? 45 confirmed yes as well. And in 2019, 6 police officers in Canada took their lives. So it's a very alarming concern. Some of the contributing factors to that are occupational stress, for example, exposure to traumatic situations such as car accidents, murder scenes, child abuse, sexual assaults, responding to current mental health crises that our society is facing, and violence can leave officers vulnerable to psychological issues such as anxiety, depression, PTSD, substance use disorder that directly results from activities performed in their line of duties. Organizational stress, it's another contributing factor. Organizational stressors often cause serious challenges for police officers. Stressors such as understaffing, lack of resources, promotion processes, and organizational culture are leading components in those areas. For example, mental health stigma would be one of them. Even though it's less common today, but it's still very alive. Nobody talks about it, but things are not okay. And it's hard for police officers to reach out for help. Another organizational stressor is authoritarian, narcissistic, and unpredictable leadership. Leaders, in my opinion, have a critical role to play in contributing to conditions for positive mental health, whether their own or their employees. Well, I strongly believe that whether you are a suit leader or upper management, middle management, entry level, boots on the grounds, or board of directors, you are either contributing to your organization to flourish or the opposite from that. Various reviews shows that often police officers tend to rank organizational stressors higher than operational stressors as a source of their anxiety. New information from the Workplace Institute indicates that almost 70% of people feel that their managers have more impact on their mental health than their therapists and their doctors. So obviously, as a leaders, we have a great opportunity here to impact wellness of our police officers, and at the same time leaders as well. A positive word and an act of support is very empowering and frequently goes way further than not talking about that. Organizational culture is another contributing factor. Police officer can encourage police culture frequently encourages supportiveness and teamwork, and compel police to hold themselves to the higher standard. However, it can also translate to toughness, cynicism, and extreme loyalty. In a work environment that prizes toughness and stoicism, mental health can be perceived as a weakness. Therefore, officers may not feel very comfortable coming forward. And if they don't come forward, they suffer in isolation. And so it's just them and what they are going through. Witnessing such as behavior by other police officers, whether they are new recruits or more mature, may impact their ability to come forward. Let's not talk about that. Then be criticized because of it, or that they worry that may impact their career moves as well. It can also prevent them from reaching out help as well, because they can't have the tendency of suppressing things.
Thank you so much for providing all of that context and statistics as well. Like, those are quite staggering numbers of these people. I'm just wondering how many of these might be self-diagnoses versus being diagnosed by a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And is there a danger in self-diagnosing?
It is. I think it's important to notice that statistically, 1 in 3 Americans has searched on their own what's going on with them or what's wrong with them, whether it's a mental health illness or any physical conditions. I think generally it's a good idea to do that, but it can also create some big question mark or put you at danger. While knowing more information about certain symptoms can be useful, it can also potentially be misleading and very harmful. Mental health, I think we need to understand that mental health illness or disorders, conditions, however we want to call them, it's a very complex topic. And just having an opportunity to search the internet not necessarily offers you the right diagnosis or the right answers. I do believe that's a good first step forward to, as an individual, to see what's going on with you, but it can also lead, we call this commonly as a cyberchondria, where you get to the point where you're continuously searching for an answer on what's wrong with you and how you can help yourself, that this by itself creates even more stress for you. So the best plan of action, in my humble opinion, is to go and search the internet, but go and get help with a trusted professional who is experienced in that area to find out what's going on with you and how you can develop a treatment plan with the support of that professionals to help you to get better.
I love that. Start on the internet, but don't just stay there. You need to talk to someone as well. Kind of building off of that, how often are officers seeking out professional help? And then on the other hand, because of potential stigmas around asking for help, how often are they staying quiet?
Well, I think we need to take a little bit step back here and look at the general population. At large, we as human beings or population are reluctant to admit or to seek help right away. A recent study indicates that delays in seeking help for treatment, for example, for mood disorder, ranges from 6 to 8 years. And for anxiety disorder, anywhere from 9 to 23 years. And for PTSD, anywhere from 12 and up. And police officers are known to be even more reluctant than general population to seek help when it comes to mental health support. There are a number of reasons why the delay is taking place. Frequently, they think that there's nothing wrong with them. They may also feel that they can address this by themselves. Another contributing factor would be view this as a weakness. And frequently, and specifically when it comes to first responder and police officers, admitting that there's something not right with you is perceived as a form of the weakness. Shame plays another very important component. And even though we professionally, from the clinical perspective, we recognize shame as a contributing factors, many police officers and first responder cannot even name it, but this is a very, very alive issue there. Lack of self-compassion, it's another contributing factors. Struggle to be vulnerable, and that's mainly related to the police officer's job. Vulnerability, we teach them opposite than vulnerability. And all of a sudden, when we are going through a difficult time, and we ask them, individuals like police officer, to be vulnerable, they don't know how to do that. And another contributing factor is finding the right mental health professionals to assist you with that. Many mental health professionals don't fully understand the first responders' struggles and culture, and first responders for themselves are exposed at the risk that being misunderstood or not feeling safe to share their stories, what's going on with them.
I think that's an important thing to remember. It's like not every mental health professional does understand the public safety personnel perspective. So finding someone who does understand that is really important. So where I'd like to go next is I've seen some studies done by institutions like Harvard and the University of Alberta, and they've found that there is a serious anxiety and depression problem in younger generations, such as millennials and Gen Z or Gen Z. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what they may have found?
Of course, challenges that millennials and Generation Z, as we call them, are facing may have a significant impact on retaining current staff and recruiting new staff in law enforcement agencies. A recent study shows that half of the millennials, age of 24 to 39, said they left their job partially to mental health. Studies also shows that during the past decade, drug-related deaths among millennials increased to over 108%, and alcohol-induced deaths rose over 69%. So obviously, there's a lot of concerns that this generation is facing, millennials are facing. Many millennials are of a number of reasons. Millennials are often reluctant to appear weak when it comes to mental health struggles. They will suppress this to the maximum and not talk about it. They want to make sure that they are successful in the job without realizing that it is actually impacting their job. And the mental health stigma doesn't help. Even though I sometimes feel that we sounds like a broken record now, because we frequently bring that mental health stigma to light, but it's still very alive. And it varies from organization to organization, from a community to a community, from a person to a person, but it is still there, and we need to do a better job for this specific generation, anybody else as well, to overcome the mental health stigma struggles. Many millennials still face judgment from their peers when it comes to mental health, not directly calling them on mental health, but talking in general about mental health, or stuck it up, buttercup, old way of dealing with, or are you what? Can you get your S together? You're better than that. So that doesn't help when it comes to reaching out for help. So they are hesitant to reach out for help. And also those who are next to them, witnessing this and maybe potentially going through similar situations or struggles, are not going to step up to share that. So it's a snowball effect. It's a vicious circle when one feeds the other. So this generation specifically is struggling with that. And also this is a generation that went through major economic changes within our society, one being 2008 and the market collapse and pandemic that recently we all went through, which doesn't help as well. So this also impact them financially and emotionally, how to manage this cycle to recover from that. And Generation Z, or Gen Z as we call them, a recent survey 2002, that studied the generation age and concluded that individuals age of 19 to 24, they found that 42% are diagnosed with mental health conditions. So that's a high number if you really think about that. And this is our youngest generation that is just entering the labor force or just entered the labor force. And they're going through such a challenging mental health struggles already. So we call this generation, studies call this generation, that this is the most anxious generation of our times. Gen Z and Gen anxiety, it's fueled by a number of things, pandemic being one, technology, social media, and other life stressors. So pandemic definitely created a lot of social isolation, uncertainties, fear among the generation. And they are exposed to many different news stories. One being they are being bombarded, for example, online news stories about police brutality, environmental stressors, social injustice, and the list goes on and on. So that definitely has quite a bit of impact on them. Technology being another stressor. Unlike any previous generation, Gen Z has little or no memory of a world without internet. So I had an opportunity to talk to, actually, in our work setting, to one of our youngest administrative assistants. She has no knowledge about internet not being there 20 years ago, or 20 or 30 years ago. It's like, wow. Or when it comes to smartphone and social media. So technology plays a substantial part in their lives. And study also shows that taking advantage of technology is a good thing, but study also shows that half of the Gen Z that they research and study spend 10 or more hours online, which leads to social isolation. They struggle with face-to-face contact with people because they are not part of that. They are usually online and interacting with the world, but in-person contact is something that is very challenging for them. Social media interaction for Gen Z is very also stressful for a number of reasons, specifically for women, where there are a number of social platforms that are creating that stress. Do I fit in? Or would I have to fit in? Whether those social platforms are supportive or less supportive, but there's that perception I better fit in. As you can imagine, TikTok, Snapchat, or whatever that is, that generation is really trying to fit in what other people are doing, from taking into account what they are already struggling with. That doesn't help them. And another component is to be exposed to cyberbullying. We rarely talk about it, but professionally in our line of work, we see a number of young people coming forward with that concern. It's a real concern for them. On the other hand, this generation is not very shy from bringing their concerns to the world. Whether those concerns are about social issues, social injustice, they would be right in your face, letting you know that they are unhappy about this. They want to change the world. This generation wants to have an impact, and they do this in a fantastic way. Whether posting about this, or if they don't post, they repost. If they don't, if they protest, they post about that. So that creates a lot of pressure on the society, and they know how to bring their issue to the front page. So now, when you think about that, on one hand, they are very progressive, bringing those issues forward. However, when it comes to mental health, due to all of those struggles that I mentioned, they face many challenges. So now, how do we help them to overcome this? It's a very very valid questions that we all need to put forward, because whether they are millennials or Generation Z, the world is changing, and we need to meet them where they are at, or otherwise we will be in trouble moving forward.
Really well said. And you said something right near the beginning there. Just, although that I'm millennial, so I'll say we, although we're very open to, sharing our thoughts and opinions, and, we talk about mental health all the time, there's still such a stigma of coming forward. And, if we're struggling, we might not come forward, even though we've talked about it so much. My next question kind of goes off of these challenges that you were talking about. And, these generations are the ones that are becoming law enforcement recruits right now, and they're joining the law enforcement profession. So how do you think these challenges are going to be affecting these new recruits in these roles? And ultimately, you kind of just touched on it there, like, are mental health professionals ready for this potential shift in these new recruits?
Well, I always ask people that I have ability to converse about the topic, and I ask a very simple question: are we ready? And we are not. For a number of reasons, and many millennials already withdrew from policing because of mental health struggle, because of those challenges that are taking place. Generation Z are not very interested in becoming police officers for a number of reasons. They are already facing mental health challenges and struggles and anxiety or stress. Why would they involve in that? View policing as a very stressful job. So if you're already dealing with stress, would you go and have more stress? Plus, they are not interested in facing scrutiny and injustice that is currently taking place. And I think also, as a society, we need to really take into account what is happening in the media when it comes to negative portrayals of police work. It doesn't help at all. So as a society, we have a big job to do here. We need to change some of these things around, acknowledging what took place that was wrong, but also moving forward with the positive things that are there. Solutions, in my humble opinion, is definitely go and keep pounding that social, mental health stigma, and revisit mental health stigma from the millennials and from the Generation Z perspective, what that means to them, because that's not ignoring current people that are in the labor force, but really ask a question: what do we need to do to change that? And so normalizing mental health in a very broad statement would be one example, but how to do that, go back and ask them directly, what do they need? And as an organization, as a leader, as a care provider, as a society, we need to ask that question. Should we be doing something different than we are already doing to meet their expectations? Leaders needs to be more attentive to millennials and generations that needs. training. I recall, again, that's another topic for another podcast, but I really need to, I feel that we need to redesign how we train first responders and police officers to be more attentive to their needs, to make them more resilient. We need to look at the organizational culture, move away from old way of doing things, and I know we are very attached to that, but listen to what your people are telling you, right? Best case scenario is listen, allow yourself as a leader, as an organization, to listen more and engage these people in this decision-making process. This is where you would be more successful. Show this support and empathy. I know that in the first responders world and policing, empathy sometimes it's like a foreign word, but it has so much, it creates so much opportunity to be there for another human being. Law enforcement organizations need to do a better job also, or take this to the next level, to be there not only for millennials and Gen Z individuals who are joining or are part of the policing, but they need to also be there for the families. We need to understand that first responder job and policing work as well impacts the lives of their families. It changes the moment you enter the force. 2 years, a year from today, you are not the same person. It changes you as an individual. It impacts not only you directly, but also impacts your families. And we need to help first responders, police officers, to be able to go home and have a life that each of us enjoys so beautifully. So, and allow and make sure that we are there for the family members as well. So I think as an organization, as a society, we need to go back to the drawing board and say, how about engaging and helping those families to also be part of that journey, and having an opportunity to teach our first responders how to talk to their families and teach their families how to talk to their loved ones as well, and how to support each other. I think this is one of the biggest things that I strongly believe we should be getting on as quickly as possible, engaging those individuals into decision-making process, making sure that we restructure the training to meet their needs, engage their families, do exactly what actually was introduced, I think, about 8 years or 10 years ago in the US military. It was introduced by Dr. Seligman from the positive psychology. He is a guru. If you don't know, if the audience doesn't know who he is, Dr. Martin Seligman, Google him. He's he's a father of positive psychology. He introduced that concept in the US Army of addressing mental health in the following stages: in the pre-deployment stage, before they are being deployed, so that would be when they are in depot, getting trained; then pre-deployment stage, when they are actually in the force doing the job, when they are deployed; and then when they return from deployment. And that's what goes in the circle. And it's not only for them, but also for their families. So if we want to be sustainable as a society, we better get on it. I know I may sound very strong on that. I am, and based on my experience and my conversation with many other professionals in the field, and those who come to get better to our program, that's what we hear from them. So we'd be happy to know that.
Thank you, Derek. That was so informative. And I think that's a great way to end off our first podcast together. We are going to be continuing this conversation in the future. And I'm really glad to have gotten your insights on this topic and how it really pertains to mental health in law enforcement. So thank you again.
Well, thank you for having me. I sincerely appreciate that opportunity.
For everyone who tuned in, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Blue Line, the podcast. You can check us out on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also stay up to date on all of your Canadian policing news at blueline.ca. Until next time, stay safe and be well.